everyone. My name is Sanjeev Kagram. I'm the Director General, Dean, and CEO of the Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University. As I love to say, nowhere do you get the combination of the #1 school for global leadership and management and the #1 university for innovation. We are just so delighted to welcome to you to this incredible session, panel, Globinar, with our great partners, the Global Chamber and Doug Brunke, and this incredible panelist crew that we have from here in the United States as well on the continent. For us at Thunderbird, we have three principles during this extraordinary time that is marked by this global pandemic. One is to support and ensure and to focus on prioritize everyone's health, safety, and well-being. That's certainly physical health, but also emotional, psychological, spiritual, and otherwise. So we hope that everyone is healthy and safe with their loved ones wherever they may be. Number two is certainly to deliver world-class excellence in all that we do. And there's no better example of this than our partnership with the Global Chamber and this particular Globinar specifically. And third is to exercise global leadership as an institution, as Thunderbirds, and as a Thunderbird Global family with our great partners, ASU, Global Chamber, District Expert, many others around and here in the United States and around the world. For us, Africa is absolutely a critical part and priority of Thunderbird's vision and mission in the world. Our vision is a world of sustainable and equitable prosperity, and we are committed to empowering and influencing global leaders and leadership for the fourth industrial revolution. As many of you know, I am from Africa. I was born in Jinja, Uganda, fourth generation Ugandan and Kenyan, my mother's side from Kenya and my father's side from Uganda. So it means it means very much to me, deeply personal to me. And also have been working with my wonderful brothers and sisters on the continent for all of my professional life, including having been at, perhaps the pinnacle of my professional experience being Dean of the Desmond Tutu Peace Center with Archbishop Tutu. So this is a great event. Our work on the continent Thunderbird has grown dramatically with incredible faculty like Professor Landry Signé, who you'll hear from in a second, and Professor Koretz Macau and Philip Tigo and many others. We have an incredible regional center of excellence in Nairobi, and soon we'll have one in Dakar, in Cape Town, in Algiers. Incredible partnerships with the African Union, the new African Free Trade Institution, the World Economic Forum in Africa, and so many others. So we are incredibly bullish on the continent. We know that it is the future of the world. And despite the challenging times, we know that this year is the year of renewal and transformation for Africa and for the world as we really accelerate and scale the decade of action. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mel Sanders, who's going to be our facilitator, Sanderson, who's going to be our organizing leader here. Mel is, what can I say about Mel? She is absolutely phenomenal in every way, a true global leader, Thunderbird, ASU, a wonderful human being, most of all, just honor for your partnership and everything that you do for us here in Phoenix, for Arizona, for the state, for the country, but really for the world and all of your incredible work, certainly on Africa. So Mel, over to you, and thank you so much for all your leadership.
Well, thank you, Sanjeev. I am left virtually speechless, which is, everyone who knows me realizes that rarely happens. But thank you for your very kind words and for your enduring friendship. And thank you also to Thunderbird and to Global Chamber, to the Department of Commerce, and to the Arizona District Export Council for coming together to make today's event possible. I will just say about myself that I was in the United States Diplomatic Service for 20 21 years. It was the dream career. It made me who I am. And it also brought me to Africa. And it's actually the reason why I left the Foreign Service, because it brought me to an assignment in the Democratic Republic of the Congo right after the war in that country ended, which was Africa's world war, as most people recognize it to have been. And I wanted to stay. I fell in love with the Congo. Unlike Sanjeev, unlike Ruby, unlike Landry, I don't have actual physical connections to African families, but I have deep emotional ties to my families in the Congo, and I wanted to continue to work and to fight for that country that deserves better than it so far has received from history. So that's why I joined Freeport-McMoran, and I wound up living in the Congo for almost 8 years before coming back to Phoenix. Here in Phoenix, I have the privilege of being the chair of the Arizona District Export Council, working to help exporters find new avenues of business success in the world. And that allows me to continue to work towards my personal passions around realizing the potential of the African continent. And we're going to speak in general terms of Africa today. But of course, we're very cognizant that there's no such thing as Africa in a sense, because every country is unique. Every country has special opportunities, and in some cases, special challenges. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to touch on some of those opportunities and challenges in our discussion today. So we're very honored to have 4 outstanding panelists with us. We have Dennis Whitehorse Jones. He is an exporter to Africa, and we'll be hearing from him very shortly about some of his experiences. We have William Fanjoy, who I have the liberty of calling Bill. He is an experienced U.S. government official and is currently basically running the show at Prosper Africa. And if you have not heard of Prosper Africa, for that alone, you will be glad that you tuned in today. We have Rubby Golo, who is in the unique position of being in Africa and assisting U.S. exporters to achieve broader and greater success once they get their exports to Africa. And we have Professor Landry Signé, and he is I would say unhesitatingly, world-renowned expert on the African continent. And he will be speaking to us about Africa's bright future and its continental trade agreement and opportunities that can present for U.S. exporters. So without further ado, I'd like to launch into our discussion. And let's begin with Dennis. Dennis, you are not only a successful exporter, but a proud member of the Navajo Nation. Did you face any special challenges in achieving export success? And if so, how did you overcome those? I will ask each speaker to take 5 minutes to respond to this initial question. And as a reminder, when you reach 4 minutes, I will interrupt you with a 1-minute warning. Go ahead, Dennis. Dennis, you're on mute.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank the Global Chamber, Doug, and everybody at Thunderbird for putting this event on, and I'm honored to be a guest. In response to your question, Mel, I've been in business for 25 years, and I've been exporting my product for 20 years. When I first started out, I thought it was going to be quick and easy, and I was so wrong. I found out that there was a lot of obstacles that I had to overcome that I were unaware of. And I just kind of jumped in head first and tried to feel my way through it. I learned a hell of a lot along the way. And over the past 20 years, I've probably been through every possible scenario that you could imagine, from mad cow disease to everything under the sun, to disrupt your shipments to these foreign countries. In terms of Africa, a good friend of mine is Saud Sayed. He is a member of the royal family of Saudi Arabia, and he represents my company in Saudi Arabia. He introduced me to a colleague in Africa, actually in Egypt, in Cairo, Dr. Hassan Al-Shir. He is the president of the Egyptian Center of Excellence and the Desert Research Center in Cairo. He was very good to me. He actually come to Scottsdale and met with me at my home in Paradise Valley and educated me on the different things that I would have to overcome in exporting my product to these different countries. He really helped me a lot. Relationships are really meaningful. If you can establish relationships with these different countries and different people in these countries that you feel comfortable in dealing with, that means a hell of a lot. I also learned that the freight forwarding companies, the companies that haul your cargo, your product from US ports to ports in Africa or anywhere in the world, those are critical parts of the puzzle. And I established myself with several different companies here in the US that are global. And if anybody wants the information on that, contact me offline. I'd be more than happy to help you, because these are people that are knowledgeable on which ports to ship to, which ports not to ship to, anywhere in the world. Now we're shipping into Nigeria. And we have pictures on our website, humate.com, that will tell you about what we're doing in Nigeria, and also in India and different parts of the world. But we've been in business for 30 years. Our product is used for soil remediation, for cleaning up dead soils that have been contaminated by chemicals, or agriculture, conventional and organic. One of the last things that is probably very important, well, it is very important, is payment. How do you get paid for sending your product to these countries? And I've learned over the years—
1 minute warning, Dennis.
Okay, I've learned over the years that prepay, if possible, is the best way to sell your product. I've been at it such a long time that I demand prepayment. Letters of credit, international letters of credit, to me, they aren't worth the paper they're wrote on. Now, I'm sure if you're dealing in hundreds of millions of dollars, that's probably different. For me, they didn't work. So again, I'm running out of time, but I'd like to say thank you to everybody. You can contact me at humate.com is our website. I'd be more than happy to help you any way I can. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm impressed. You had 10 whole seconds to spare.
Wow, I'm getting good at this.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll roll those over so that in the discussion portion, you'll receive 10 extra seconds.
Thank you.
Bill Fanjoy, as I mentioned, and here you can see details about Bill, works at Prosper Africa. And Bill, I know that you've had a long and distinguished government career. And during that time, you've had the chance to do many challenging and interesting things. Given that, I'm wondering if you can tell us what led you to take this position at Prosper Africa.
Sure, Mel, and good morning, all. This position really is a result of a long career, first focused on development, a regular economic development. I also lived in Congo, but the other side of the river from you. So I was in Brazzaville, and before that I was in Mali, and still speak French and Bambara and have long discussions with my villager friends. But after working in development for about half of my career, I and many of my colleagues gravitated towards trade because of the sustainability of a regular business agreement that where you did not have to worry about further financing from a donor, and the longevity of it was created because and sustainability because two entities were married to it. And now I'm back with kind of in between, back with development and trade by working with AID, really because there are resources that AID and development organizations like MCC have for companies, US companies who are in trade. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about Prosper Africa. We are a full range of US government services and resources to help companies identify real deals and bring them to close. We were created to help both African and US companies harness two-way trade, not just US to Africa, but also Africa to the US, and also investment. African countries investing in the United States, and the US investing in Africa. The initiative makes it easier than ever before for companies to access new and improved suites of government tools, including our usual resources that I'm sure you all are very familiar with, such as matchmaking and due diligence through the commercial service, or financing, as Dennis was alluding to, but through XM and DFC, advisory services through the UZX and MBDA centers, but now also includes the less utilized partners and the ones that were more focused on development, such as market research and innovation funding through USAID, and contract opportunities through MCC, the Millennium Challenge Corporation. So if you're getting a little confused about all these services and all these agencies, just go to our website, prosperafrica.dfc.gov, and we have got on the front page our toolkit, which lists all of the services for the functions: exporting, importing, trade, investment, etc. In particular, and to really get into the weeds now, I personally never send a US client to Africa without, and you could write this down, an XM letter of interest. This tells the competition that USG is backing you. XM export insurance, a USTDA training grant to offset state-supported competition, a list of current MCC contracts. Now, the beauty of MCC, Millennium Challenge Corporation, is that they are not giving the majority of their contracts to US companies. And that's a good thing for the US companies watching, because there is room to grow here. Only about 17% of the contracts are going to US companies, but here's the stat. This should blow your mind. 70% of the time that US companies bid on these contracts at MCC, 70, they win them. Most of the time, they're not getting these contracts back to the 17% because they just don't know that they exist.
1 minute warning, Bill.
Okay, so on the USAID side of the resources, AID has got financing, not just for development projects, but for innovative trade programs such as DIV, Development Innovation Ventures, that has tranches of financing for entry projects. I worked with a U.S. company out of California that was accessing Ghana and asked to be funded for the first tranche to introduce their product to Kumasi. So they received $200,000 to test their solution feasibility in Africa. Stage 2 is between $200,000 to $1.5 million. Stage 3, $1.5 to $5 million. The point is, there are resources through these development-focused organizations like AID and MCC that I would love to lead you to for your trade venture. Thank you so much, Mel.
Thanks, Bill. We're going to come back to learn more about that in our conversational phase. But for right now, let's move on to Rubby Golo, who, as I mentioned, as you see her details here, is based in Ghana, and her role in life and her passion is helping U.S. exporters achieve success in Africa. So Ruby, as an expert helping those U.S. companies exporting to Africa, can you please tell us what are the primary export products that you're currently seeing, and what advice would you give to new exporters to Africa?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, Ruby, we hear you.
Okay. All right. Many thanks, Mel. I'm delighted to be here, and many thanks for the opportunity. There are a lot of products and services coming out from the US to Africa. But the main four that I see are education and training services, consumer goods, information technology, and telecommunication, medical supplies and equipment, especially at this unprecedented time that we all find ourselves in. And in answering your second part of the question, for me, if for any company looking to export to Africa, they need to get ready with an export plan. Going international requires serious preparation by the entire workforce of your company. Your company must invest time in things like learning new languages, cultures, regulations, etc. And the fact that the impact of time zones on communication need to be looked at as well. It is therefore essential to talk to people who are already trading in Africa and have done some successful business as your steady case. The other point that I want to highlight is choosing the right market route. Collaboration is the key, is the future. You do not have to internationalize on your own. It is therefore important that you find the right distributors and agents. Dennis earlier on mentioned that relationships matter, and therefore it is important that you get to connect to the right people. So whatever approach you finally adapt, successful international business is largely dependent on the right network that you build for your business. The other area that a lot of people think is not important is getting to do market research, which is very important and must be taken very seriously. For new exporters, therefore, have to have a clear objective of what they want to see in that market research, and working with professionals on the ground will be the way to go. Compliance, for me, is also very important because, as you know, every country has their own rules and laws. And so you need to understand and apply the right rules that apply to your business. If not, you may have to kind of consult a local lawyer for guidance. And of course, I mean, it is always key for you to get professional advice. That is why it is very essential for new exporters to belong to business clubs, chamber of commerce, such as the Global Chamber, where you can get some kind of guidance as to how you can approach your going international and coming into Africa. And of course, I mean, getting professional help from the US Embassy Trade Department, from local business consultants, local chamber of commerce, are all areas that one can go for help and support. So I don't know how much I have, but those are some of the areas that I think that anyone new to exporting to Africa will have to follow.
Well, okay, thank you, Ruby. You're winning the gold star for most concise. We'll see if Landry can beat you. You had 1 whole minute left. But I'm going to come back
Thank
and pick up on some of those themes that you mentioned. And particularly as a former diplomat, thank you very much, Ruby, for mentioning the embassies, because the embassies can play a very key role in helping
Thank you.
exporters. When
Yeah.
there is a Department of Commerce office attached to the embassy, that's obviously an excellent resource. Commerce is not present in every country, and therefore the State Department in many countries also does business support and export promotion. So thanks, Ruby, for bringing that up and giving me a chance to talk about the good old days.
You're very welcome, Mel.
And so now we'd like to turn to Professor Landry Signé. And as you see, he is, as I previously mentioned, a world-renowned expert. And Landry, I know that you actually released a new book last year, which is entitled Unlocking Africa's Business Potential. So could you briefly identify some key trends or opportunities you see for US exporters to the continent?
Hello, and thank you very much, Melissa, for the kind introduction. And I have greatly enjoyed also listening to Dennis, Bill, Ruby, and I also want to highlight the wonderful and extraordinary leadership of our Dean Kagoram, and the efforts he's making in really bringing Thunderbird to Africa. So perhaps I will take the minute so I'm very grateful to Ruby for offering me her minute. So in my book, Unlocking African Business Potential, which was released in April last year, so I identify about 13 trends which really make Africa a core business destination. As a matter of fact, I'm explaining the tremendous economic potential, transformational trends, in addition to the high return on investment. You also have high societal impact. So doing business with Africa is not just good for high returns, but it's also good for job creation and broader welfare generated. So among the key trends, so the first one is the fast population growth. So by 2030, Africa will have 1.7 billion people, and 7 countries will have the largest population, including Nigeria, Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Tanzania, Kenya, and South Africa. So, and for that population, will have a combined consumer and business spending of about $6.7 US trillion. So that is one core trend. A second trend is the growth of the middle class and household consumption. So about 43% of the African population will have discretionary income, and some of the largest area of spending will include food and beverage, housing, health, and broader consumer goods in general. So that is also with core markets including Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, among others. In terms of business spending, you also have some of the largest sectors will include agriculture and agri-processing, about $1 trillion, manufacturing, construction, transport, among other sectors. So a fourth key trends is also related to the fast urbanization in Africa. So we are moving from about 6 cities to 17 cities of more than 5 million inhabitants, and to also about 3 to 5 cities of more than 10 million inhabitants. So you have that shift. Many businesses now are thinking about Africa from a city perspective and not just from a country perspective. So important trend to bear in mind. So the fifth trend is the industrialization, especially when we speak about industries without smokestacks. So when people think about Africa and industrialization, they think about traditional manufacturing, and that's why many will consider that Africa is not industrializing. But when we look at industries without smokestacks, export in those industries have grown 6 times faster than export in traditional manufacturing. So, and I'll be happy to further discuss those during the discussion. So we have the effort, the sixth factor is the effort to close the infrastructure gap. Recently, the African Investment Forum organized by the African Development Bank and other. So Africa is many of the African countries are making monumental progress in closing the infrastructure gap, although we still have a deficit, but deficit also means opportunity for businesses. So the innovation to unlock agricultural and resource wealth. You know that Africa has about 60% of the world unused arable land. So that is important to take into consideration.
1 minute warning.
Absolutely. And then we have the fast digitalization and increased technological innovation. In the late 90s, New York City had more mobile phone subscribers than the entire continent of Africa. And now the continent has over 700 mobile phone subscribers. We also have the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, which are adopted at an incredible speed on the continent. So we also have the increased stability on the continent in the recent year compared to the late 90s, the improved business and ease of doing business on the continent. So the improving business environment. Of course, we have challenges, but numerous progress have been made. So the fast regional integration and with the adoption of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which was officially which came officially into force as of January of this year. And it's the largest trade organization globally after the World Trade Organization in terms of number of countries, and which present also a tremendous potential. And the two final points is also the critical role played by the African diaspora in whether the role as for building bridges, representing, investing among other, or sharing knowledge, technology transfer, and the increased competition between established and emerging African partners. So those are some of the core trends which are explaining why, if you are not doing business with Africa now, or if you are not considering doing business with Africa now, you are probably missing one of the fastest growing markets, which offers some of the highest return of investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So for our participants, I want to say, please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box. We're actively going to be monitoring that, and I will be glad to feature questions into the discussion. Use the Q&A rather than the chat box, please. You can use the chat box for communicating privately among yourselves, but the Q&A box for questions. So the first question, and this is in a conversational format, so it's not directed necessarily to any individual participant. So I may suggest to someone that they start the conversation, but everyone should jump in as you feel appropriate. I want to pick up on the theme that I mentioned at the beginning of both opportunities and challenges. So I think that we've done a good job and an appropriate job in starting on that note of there are tremendous opportunities available. And that is true. And I would like to echo what Landry said, that now's your time, get into the market. As Bill said, we're not landing the contracts, but it's only because we don't know they're there. In my personal experience, Africans still today prefer Americans as business partners over Chinese. Let me dispel the myth that somehow China has gained a foothold on the continent because Africans want to do business with China. That's not true. They want to do business with America. But let's also talk about some of the traditional hurdles that have held Africa back. And I'd like to start with infrastructure. So I will suggest in this case that Landry perhaps begin on this discussion, because my personal hope would be that one important development from the Continental Free Trade Agreement would be improved continent-wide infrastructure connectivity with reduced barriers at customs points, something much more analogous to the European Union, which I know is the objective. So if you could speak to the likelihood that that is attainable, the scope of investment necessary, because that's where the opportunities lie for US businesses, and the time frame in which we might start to see some of this rolling out. So Landry, you first, everybody else then jump in.
Yes, thank you very much, Melissa. Per a recent study, Africa needs about 130 and 180 billion dollar for infrastructure projects per year, and mobilize about 80 billion dollar per year. So we have seen a progress, but the gap remains very important. Numerous initiatives have been adopted, including the program for infrastructure development in Africa, aiming at connecting the different regions of the continent. So definitively the success, one of the key factors for the success of the African continental free trade area will be the successful implementation of core infrastructure. And they have many implications. They reduce the costs for doing business. And when we speak about infrastructure, I want to speak both about physical infrastructure, but also other soft infrastructure. So on the physical infrastructure side, for example, it's important to connect countries to different roads, railways, and air transportation, among others. So it is easier, for example, to move from South Africa, let's say, to London than to move from South Africa to Cameroon in many instances. So African leaders have also started to address some of those questions by creating also a continental institution to favor those initiatives. So on one hand, when engaging with leaders at the presidential level, at the ministerial level, they are all aware of the critical importance of infrastructure. On the other hand, one of the challenges is the funding for those resources. And that is one of the reasons why countries like China will sometimes, in that specific sector, outperform some American companies. I think that if American companies can really come with effective solution, or including partnerships, they can partner with other collaborators which could provide faster resources, and then they bring their unique technical skills. As you pointed out, Melissa, and it is not just an opinion, per Afrobarometer survey, African citizens prefer the US model of development compared to the Chinese one. So Africans love doing business with American, and I think that it also results in better outcome, because as you know, if you are an American citizen and if you are involved in poor business practices or corruption, you'll be sued in America. So it's also good for African to do business with American, because ultimately they will get more for their resources.
Thanks, Landry. I want to toss this towards you, Bill, because I think that there are several things that Landry just said that you might like to respond to, particularly in regards to we're being out-financed by China aspect. And also a lot of the infrastructure, whether physical or soft, is going to be government contracts that you had touched briefly on before. And I also wanted to pose one of the questions from the audience, because it fits nicely into this, which comes from Creighton Butts, who is a blockchain coder and IT network engineer. And he's interested in opportunities, possible opportunities in that domain, which, at least in my view, might reside in this area. So Bill, let me toss that your way.
Hey, Mel, happy to. I was just about to jump in anyway on the financing side, Landry, because half of the justification for awarding any infrastructure project to a company is the financing. So it's not just our technical qualifications. That is half of it. Financing is the other half. So number one is understanding what the competition is coming in at. So as you are looking at opportunities, if you can work with the embassy, either econ or the commercial section, to first set up for them who you are competing against, what are the terms, and once we have an idea of what the government is looking for, what the competition is coming in at, then we can work better with organizations such as DFC and XM on the letter of interest of the terms of what's the percent, is there a grace period, what are the number of years for a loan. When I was talking to a government entity about what was important to them in terms of financing, it was not what you would think it is, and because we were going to price, it's got to be the overall price, and they said no, it's more like a mortgage for a house. What they're really interested in is, what are my monthly payments going to be? So if they can stretch that out from a 7-year to a 17-year, even drop it a percent or two and have a 1 or 2 year grace period, then it gives them a stronger footing for going forward, that they can afford it, that they're not going to exceed their debt limit. And if there are any problems, that there is some forgiveness in there, and there's a structure for working with them. So certainly understanding the competition and sharing the information with our embassy regarding advocacy. If any of our participants are bidding on public sector tenders, by all means, work with your USIAC, inform them that you're bidding on a contract, because if we don't know that you're bidding on it, then we don't know to advocate for you to win it. And that is exactly what our job is at the embassy overseas, is to move you from number 3 to number 1 as diplomatically as we can, making sure that your solution is the best solution, of course, for the country. But if we don't know that you're bidding, then we cannot help you. So certainly be in touch with your USIAC regarding advocacy. In terms of relationship building, it is important to build the relationships at the ground floor level, but it's also important to build these relationships with your financing organizations. I already mentioned XM, but also DFC. DFC is supporting projects across the continent in numbers of areas, certainly roads and data centers. So is MCC. And if they don't know that you have a competency in a certain area, then they will not know to include you in very pertinent information that you need to be competitive. And so an example, DFC does have feasibility studies. Many people do not know that they have these. That's an excellent way to begin your venture on any one project, is to be in a partnership with DFC from the very get-go, and then of course go to DFC for the financing, etc. I think I'll stop there and see if any of our other panelists have more to contribute, or if there are any questions about what I mentioned, MCC advocacy at the embassy, DFC, or XM.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, actually, there's a question in the chat box, but I think perhaps my recommended answer to that would be for specific details on how to get enrolled as a potential business provider for some of these programs. Reach out directly to Bill. He's provided his email coordinates, and I'm sure he'll be happy to be inundated with messages. And I want to turn, and I also would like to dispel a myth, another myth, the myth that XM only finances giant corporations. That's a myth. That is not true. Over 70% of XM financing goes annually to small and medium enterprises in the United States. So XM is your friend. Ruby and Dennis, I want to touch on this infrastructure aspect from a couple of different angles, drawing on a couple of questions in the chat box, and also picking up this general theme. I want to talk about potential difficulties in distribution for a product when you've successfully managed to develop all of the necessary prerequisites that Ruby touched on, and you've launched your first export. So Ruby, you're, I know, particularly well placed to talk about how that might affect exporters and how to overcome distribution questions. And Dennis, I'd like to hear if that's ever affected you with your products in any of the countries where you're exporting to. And the angle that comes in from the chat box is touching on the pandemic, because obviously it's the elephant in the room. And so the question becomes, how can exporters adapt to not just current pandemic realities, but potential pandemic, post-pandemic opportunities? So I'd like to toss that to Ruby and Dennis. Ruby, why not ladies first?
Okay, thank you, Mel. To take it from the angle of consumer goods, for instance, there's a lot of growing middle class families in Africa that appreciate foreign goods. And so for an exporter in that sector, it's very important to identify a key distributor that has the financial muscles to be able to, place an order, let's say a minimum of 20-footer or 40-footer of goods. And they already have the shop network within the country of focus. They already have the consumers readily available. So it's key to identify such distributors so that they jump on their back to kind of use their facility, use their network in order to promote and penetrate your product into the market. So that is what I would say. It's very key for you to be able to identify the right distributors. And you can only do so by conducting a market research, using a market research, whoever is conducting that on your behalf will actually physically go to interview these distributors, see their outlets, where they are operating from, and get to ask some specific questions that can actually help with your market strategies, etc.
Great, thanks, Ruby. Dennis?
That's a good question. My product's unique. We're not building roads or bridges, these big infrastructure projects that Landry was talking about. Ours is feeding people. It's agriculture. So people have to eat. And our product is proven, certified organic, and well vetted. And some of the biggest companies in the world use it. Dole Food Company, the largest grower in the world, is my biggest customer. I ship to them all over the world. They use our product. But what I find works for me is having a relationship with an individual in each one of these countries. I have a guy in India. I have a guy in Nigeria. I have Dr. Hassan in Cairo. I have Saud in Saudi Arabia. But these people I can communicate with, I can trust, and I can have them represent me because I can't be there. I can't be in all these different countries. So I have to have these people there that I can rely on for distribution, logistical problems, you name it, they're there, we can deal with it. And that's what we do. And there's always problems. Nothing ever goes according to plan. So you gotta be able to deal with it. And that comes from experience. And like I said, I got a bunch of that. But the relationships are so important. And there's good people out there. There's some people that their intentions are good, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they don't, and I'm not saying that derogatory. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. But there's a lot of good people out there that it may take a while to find them that you can trust and you feel confident representing you and your company and your product. And they know what you're selling. They know what it does. They know how to implement it. They know how to get it to the people that's going to pay you. And it's worth it for me to compensate these people as a distributor or as whatever it takes to work, to make it work. That's what I do, because one thing we're real firm about, and that's being flexible.
Okay, excellent. I was just scanning through the questions and answers. There's one in there that touches on that ever sensitive subject. The question was, why do U.S. businesses hesitate to do business in Africa? And I would say that based on experience, number one answer is corruption. That there's a strong perception that every African country is so corrupt that it makes doing business, particularly in light of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, almost impossible. Corruption is a problem. It is not universal in the sense that many governments have been fighting corruption, bringing in changes, enforcing regulations, ensuring transparency. Kenya's a great example. Rwanda's a good example. Maybe anyone who would like to address that, please jump in.
I'd love to jump in very quickly with our 15-second answer, and that is that we don't work with a single client who does not start with the gold key service to build a relationship with a company through the U.S. Embassy, who has vetted these companies for you to meet. So a great way to reduce risk of working with a company that is corrupt or that is trying to gain favorable access with a corrupt part of any government is to use the U.S. Embassy. I mean, there are a lot of consulting firms who can do this for you, but the reason why companies use us, the embassy, is the credibility. It's the U.S. Embassy calling. So the likelihood of the partners, the African companies, to really give a more straight answer to our questions of corruption is much better when it's the U.S. Embassy personnel asking it. And of course, then we do due diligence on the ground, where we require someone from the embassy to actually go to the place of business for the African company to make sure that they're real and that they're not just a website, and that it looks as they have set themselves up as on the website. And we'll even chat with their partners. But the only reason why we are successful with this is because it's the credibility of the U.S. Embassy working for you to make sure that we find credible, non-corrupt companies for you to work with. Thanks, Mel.
Yep. Anyone else want to, Dennis?
Yeah, I'd like to just say something. Corruption's everywhere. It's not just Africa, it's everywhere. It's in South America, it's in the Far East, it's just there. And I try to deal with it as diplomatically as I can. And just, in a kind way, say we don't do business like that, and I've walked away from a lot of deals where they say, hey, in order to sell to us, you got to pay us under the table. And I just refuse to do it. And I've walked away, and maybe I've lost business, maybe not, but that's just the way it is. But William's right. If you can use the embassies and have them tell you, who's legit and who isn't, and then also you can tell the people that you're dealing with that you're working with the U.S. Embassy, and those people are looking out for you, and you have an allegiance to the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Export Assistance Center and all of the people that support you in this endeavor, that you're not going to be involved in any type of corruption. Now, I don't mind taking a guy out and having drinks and dinner and partying all night. I can't do it like I used to 20 years ago, but I could, I used to give it a good run, but still, that only goes so far. So, but corruption's everywhere. It's not just in Africa. Trust me, it's all over the place, but it's just a little more heavy-handed in some countries as others. But there's a diplomatic way to get around it. You just got to be nice and smile and put on your happy face and tell them, that's just not part of the deal.
Dennis, the
Yeah,
U.S.
I agree.
Embassy.
That's part of the importance of relationships. I'm really, really sorry to have to do this, but we have literally 3 minutes left. So, and we still have many questions in the question and answer box. We will do our best to compile those and get answers back to you via email from the panelists that, and to make sure that they are answered. What I'd like to do at this time is to give each of our panelists 58 seconds to give a final thought that you would like our participants to take away with them as your final word. Ruby, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, in parting, I want to say that Africa is open for business. We are ready to welcome any U.S. company interested in our market. We are happy to support as much as we possibly can. Just keep an open mind and tell us specifically what you want to achieve. And I'm sure that we'll be able to connect you with the right partners.
Thank you, Ruby. Landry?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to really encourage all the business people and investors to invest or do business with Africa. And I think for obvious reason, as in my book, I'm highlighting, but which was published in last year, but also in the new volume, why I'm very specific about which sector is of interest, what are the various projections in terms of growth, in terms of opportunity, in terms of profitability, among others. So I can't just say, do business with Africa, but also engage with the US government, engage with embassies. It is extremely important to ensure your success among others. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Landry. Dennis?
In closing, I'd just like to thank everybody for being a part of this. This is very good. I been in business for a long time, and I consider myself a small, successful businessman. I've pretty much done it all internationally. I'd be willing to help anybody that has any questions, and I can help you in any way I can. Please contact me on my website, humate.com. And if you see there might be some opportunities for us to work together in some way, somehow, please don't hesitate to contact me, because we're open for business and that's what we do. Thank you very much. God bless everybody here.
And speaking of contacts, we'll get all the panelists' emails to all the participants. And Bill, final thoughts?
When you do engage, begin with the U.S. Export Assistance Center nearest to you. They will get you to the correct resource. When you go overseas after COVID is over, be sure to spend time engaging with Africans in Africa. Do not go for just 1 week. Your competition is going for much longer and are developing those long-term relationships. Even if you go on a regular gold key where you have 5 meetings over 2 days, stay longer and see what happens with those meetings for follow-up. That's it. Good luck. Looking forward to working with all of you in the future. Thanks, Mel.
Great. Thank you to all of the panelists. I just saw that the emails are available in the Q&A box for those who want to take a note of those. And Sanjeev, have you any closing remarks?
Here we go. Thank you, Mel, for your incredible leadership and facilitation as always. To Bill, Landry, Dennis, Ruby, incredible insights, wisdom. I completely agree. Africa is definitely open for business. And let's create a world where, as we say at Thunderbird, borders frequented by trade and diplomacy seldom need soldiers. And so that's what we believe in, and Africa can be truly the leader for the 21st century. Thank you again, everyone. Thanks to our partners, Global Chamber, District Expert Council, and the Department of Commerce. Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.